Hey, what's going on YouTube? Marine X back at it again. This is the Dabbsson DBS2100 Pro. And as it stands right now, this is my favorite around 2000 kilowatt hour power station. I'm going to tell you why I like it so much, but if you want a bottom line up front, if you're looking for around a 2000 kilowatt hour power station that can do a decent output, you got around 1200 bucks to spend. This is the one I would spend my money on. So go forth, use the links in the description down below. They're affiliate links. So if you make a purchase, they do benefit the channel, but they don't cost you any additional money. But if you want to know what I think about the machine, the pros and cons of it, and how I would use it, then stick around for some more. So you got my bottom line up front. This is the Dabbsson, the DBS2100 Pro. I got my spec sheet over here because sometimes I just want to make sure I get these little specs right. This is Black Friday and Cyber Monday upon us. So this is Black Friday week. We're gonna have Thanksgiving here in America in the next couple of days. If you're watching this in the future, check the links because you still may get some good deals on this as well. This is one of the newest units for Dabbsson when it comes to this kilowatt hour capacity. And I love my EcoFlows. I just recently did a review on the BLUF Elite 200 V2. Like that unit a lot, but if I had to choose between, right now at this moment, if I had to choose between the EcoFlow at their 2000 kilowatt hour unit, the BLUF and the Dabbsson, this would be the one I would choose. This is be the one I would spend my money on because of the future proofing of it, the longevity of the company, and just how they're really positioning themselves in the market. So this has a total capacity of 2150 watt hours. Okay, so the retail price on this is $17.99. It often is on sale for $11.99. Check the links down below to see what the best pricing is right now, because we are in Black Friday week. I'm going to give you some boring specs that you can look up on the internet, but maybe you don't want to and you just want me to tell you what they are. So first off, this thing can take up to 1200 watts solar charging. That's something I definitely wanted to highlight because it's crazy to me that up until this point, I think my best unit was the BLUF Elite 200, which could take 1000 watts, and maybe I had an EcoFlow, but that 1200 watts is crazy. So it can do 1800 watts from your wall. Now most 15 amp circuits can't handle that, but if you happen to be on a 30 amp or a 20 amp and you plug this up into it, if you can pull that much out of the wall, then this thing can yank 1800 watts from grid power from your AC ports. It can do 1200 solar. As mentioned, it also can do 8 amps from your carport. So if you need to charge this while you're driving down the road, especially you have that in conjunction with an alternator, you can charge it up pretty good. Also, it has the battery type on this is an EV semi-state solid LiFePO4 battery. Mouthful, but what does that mean? They're moving towards, meaning the industry is moving towards these semi-solid state LiFePO4 batteries, which are safer. LiFePO4 batteries can be extremely violent in the wrong type of scenario. And I think as they move and they continue to mine this material and they get better with the battery technology, having safer future-proofed items make a lot of percent. This can do 4,500 cycles to 80% capacity, meaning that you're going to have this thing probably 10, 12 years before you even get it down to 80%. Am I going to be able to test this and tell you, can it do 4,500? No. However, one thing I want to tell you is that before I start testing on any of these units, I like to drain and use them at least 3 times. This unit, I've had the benefit of draining and using almost 10 times because it's a part of my coffee mess, and I've been using it to test other units. So I have been working and stressing these batteries out quite a bit. We're going to talk about the ports as well. So first off, on the very front here, you do get a cluster of DC ports in the form of USB-C ports. You get 3 USB-A ports, and you also get 3 USB-C ports. The USB-A ports can do 12 watts. That's the one that's white. And then the other 2, which are blue, can do 18 watts output, which is going to be fine. You also get 2 of the USB-C ports can do 100 watts. And then the third one can do 30 watts. And so that's pretty decent. And I like to talk about every area where I wish there was improvement. In this area, I wish you can give me 1 port of those USB, maybe drop the 30 watt USB-C, change the technology around and give me one port that can do 140 watts output. That would be pretty dope, because there are some computers I have which are power hungry beasts, especially my work computer, which is a Dell. That thing wants to suck up over 100 watts all the time. So it'd be nice if I could have something like that. The very front here, you also have, which is a feature that is they're slowly bringing back in some of these units. You get the LED light, which can run in different watts. It also could do SOS mode. That's nice to have. If you have this thing sitting on a picnic table, if you have it on a concrete table, you have it in a field environment, whatever, just to have a little bit of light in front of you is nice to be able to see what the heck you're doing, what you're plugging up. And I kind of like those features as well. Out of the actual DC ports, and I like the fact that you can turn on the USB-A in the DC separately, although they're all running DC. Out of this DC barrel port, you can run 10 amps or 126 watts out of the car port. And then you have two of these smaller ports, which can run 4 amps. Now, I have other units that can do 6 amps out of these barrel ports. These can only do 4 amps. And I'm assuming because of the other technology in here, that might be important. Most people don't use these ports, but there are some scenarios where you may want to use them. All of these ports can come in handy for a number of things. You have a kettle at your camp that's like a 12-volt kettle. You have an immersion heater if you want to, warm up water a different type of way, an electric blanket, an air mattress, a compressor. All those things can run off of these barrel ports and off of the 12-volt port. So it's nice that they give you those barrels, because in the box of those units I just mentioned, some of them give you barrel to barrel. So I'm glad they didn't scrap that for this unit. So we'll talk about what is on this side. So currently plugged up into the unit. It's plugged up, but I have it plugged up into another unit that I have the AC power turned off. So I'm using the unit right now to power a space heater here in the man cave because it's cold. But over here, you do get the input. I'll just unplug this so you can see a little bit better. So you get a AC charge indicator. I'm going to tell you why I like that so much. You also get the solar input, the actual AC input, If you tripped a circuit or if you need to reset the AC inverter, that's how you do it here. Then you get a data port where you can plug this thing up into your computer or your network and update this unit without always having to use Wi-Fi. That's pretty dope. While we're here, we're gonna talk about what I like about this so much and an improvement I would like. First off, this is one of the first units I have that has a fast charging port. So right now within the app, and we'll talk about the app, is I have this set up to charge no faster than 800 watts, right? So when I have it plugged into the wall, I want to control how fast it's charging. But let's just say, for instance, I'm leaving within an hour or so. I can flip this switch and turn it to fast charging mode. And now with the flip of that switch, it will go to the maximum input that it can handle, which is 1800 watts, which in theory, I should be able to get. I have it hooked up into a Blue Yeti Elite 200 V2, which can do 2600 watts. So it should be able to fast charge. So we'll turn that into the fast charge mode. We'll plug this back up and we'll give it some power here in a second. Right now I have no power going to it. If we shift over to the other side, this is where we get the AC ports. As mentioned, I'm running a space heater right now so that's what's keeping me warm at the moment, but it has 3 of the 15 amp AC ports, and then it has an RV port. This is the 30 amp port. A lot of these units don't have this port, or if they have this port, it doesn't make a lot of sense to get it because you need battery expansion. We're going to talk about expanding this thing. Also, you do have the parallel port, which is a unique feature for this. If you get a parallel box, you can literally buy 2 of these base units. Instead of buying the battery expansion, you can buy 2 of these base units and you can just hook them up to one another. And now you can run an output maximum of 4,600 watts. So that's pretty dope. The battery expansion ports I failed to mention on this side are right here. So I like the fact that they're on 2 different sides so you won't get confused of where they are. So that means you can hook 2 of their batteries up here. So if you just use the battery expansion ports, you can expand the capacity of this from 2150 to 6450, 6,450 watt hours. If you run it in parallel, and then on that unit, you hook up the battery ports, and then on this unit, you hook up the battery ports. That means that you can actually expand this thing up to 12,900 watt hours. That is a lot of juice if you feel like spending the money on this bad boy. And this is some of the places why I'm liking this quite a bit, because it's giving me some of the physical features on the item, hardware features, instead of always relying on software. I like that a ton. You turn on the AC ports over here. Here's a place where I would like. I know they gave us the RV port, and so we had to kind of drop one of the 50 amp ports. I get that. I know it's difficult to give me 4 ports plus that. Okay. But I kind of do wish these ports were located in the front. So I know this is where batteries are located in the front, but it would have been nice if these ports were located in the front, just for ease of use. I've been using this for about a month, and it does kind of it is a kind of a headache fitting this unit in certain areas with all the ports located on the side. Okay, nothing goes on the back. The back is just a bunch of QR codes, just in case, your serial number, and all of that good stuff. All right, so they do have a hand up on some of their competitors because of what you're getting in the box. You get in the box the DC charging port so that you can actually plug this up into your vehicle and, charge this while you're driving. You get the solar cable, which is decent size, and then you get the AC plug so that you can plug this up. So you get everything that you need in the box to get this thing running. You get the manual with this, and then you also get a maintenance card, which is the first time I've seen with any of these units, which literally will tell you what the type of maintenance you did, when the last time you charged it full, when's the last time you drained it. That's pretty unique, because sometimes you just don't remember when's the last time you did maintenance to these units, especially if they're just sitting in a garage somewhere. So that's something that may be important to you. So let's see. We're at 63%. I've been running the space heater. It is at 856 watts. Now, when I turn on the power to give this juice, it should bypass the AC inverter and now feed off of the BLUF system. So let's turn that on. All right, so let's just see what this thing will jump up to. Now, the fans should kick on. It's running the fans very low right now. One thing I like about this unit is this thing only runs the fans when the unit needs it. Okay, so the fans just kicked. I'm going to turn it a little bit. Can you hear them? I don't have a decibel reader, but this is a tolerable sound if this was inside of a 12-man tent or something like that. This is a sound that's almost like white noise-esque, like it's something that can put you to sleep. So right now I'm getting 1,761 watts from the BLUF system. The BLUF system's outputting 1,845 watts. So that means between the conversion of the BLUF pumping out 1,845 watts into this unit, that some of the wattage is being received into this unit, I believe, is being used to run the fan, and maybe that's what's being shown on the screen. So you're losing a little bit of efficiency between what it's pulling and what it's actually inputting into the system. So, but I like the fact that it can legit get that 1,800. Now, I don't want to switch the AC port while it's running, so let's turn off the AC power for a second. Now, as I mentioned, there's that physical switch on the side, right? So we got this physical switch on the side. I'm going to take this down to low, to the charging mode I set up in the app. Okay. So we go back to this. I have it set back up. Let's turn the AC power back on. It should go, it's going to jump higher because it's going to bypass the inverter, and it's actually going to feed some of the power. It's going to give some of the power to the solar panel that I'm using, or the solar heater that I'm using, and then it's going to use some of the power to actually charge this. So that's why it's reading 1635. But if I were to turn off the AC port on this unit, it should drop down to the charging level that I want it to be. So you saw it go above the level I wanted, which is 800 watts, because it was bypassing the inverter to feed the solar heater while it was on while it's on grid power. Now it goes to the 800 watts. That's where I want it. In the app, I can control that. I love the fan. I love the preciseness of that. Let's turn this back on. All right, so we turned the actual AC inverter back on. You're gonna see this thing jump and spike as I turn this back on. This should spike up pretty high because I have this thing on high now. So you're going to see this thing jump up to probably like 1300 watts consistently. I want to show you how the uninterruptible power supply works on this. Now they call it an emergency power supply. They don't call it an uninterruptible power supply. They say that this thing can do 15 milliseconds. That's pretty good. Now I have tested other units that have this specific space heater plugged up into it. Blue Eddy, EcoFlow, okay. Whenever those units are running over 1,000 watts, whenever I do this test, a lot of times the space heater turns off. Let's see what happens when I do this. Turn this off. You see that jump to 0. This stays at 1,400 watts. The space heater is still on. So the space heater continued to go without a beat. When I do this test with other units, it trips. A lot of times the AC inverter is not that fast. Like when it goes from grid power to AC inverter, other units just can't handle it when it's over 1,000 watts. Let me turn this down a little bit. So when I turn this down to low mode, it should jump down to around 800 watts. So this unit, it does have a fan, but it really seems to use the fan in a couple of scenarios. When it gets above 90 degrees Fahrenheit, the fan kicks on no matter what it's doing. Or if it's pumping out over 1,000 watts, the fan will turn on. So, you know, that's something that might be improved in firmware, because just because I'm pumping out 1,000 watts, I don't know if the fan should go, but that's just something to think about. All right, so a lot of talking. The first test we just talked about was the EPS. The next test that I want to talk about was the DC drain test. Okay, so the DC drain test for this did a decent job for these type of units that I've had. It actually scored a little bit below the Blue Eddy Elite 200, and it scored above the EcoFlow in the same category. So this got 82% for the DC capacity test. Now, what does that mean to do that test? Okay, so what I do for this test is I have my little, this is called the DL24P. This thing basically forces whatever unit you have this thing plugged up into. So this thing you plug it up into the DC port, turn on the DC port here. All right, so the DC port is on now. All right, so I have this set up to draw 10 amps out of the DC port. This thing is rated to draw 10 amps. It's not drawing anything right now. When I turn this on, this thing says that it is pulling 113 watts. So it's pulling 113 watts from the DC port, but on the unit, it says it's pushing out at 127 watts. Now, I'm losing efficiency between this cable, right? So this cable is pumping power through it. It's running through 2 fuses. It's running into the unit. So I'm losing a little bit of efficiency, but I basically hook this thing up and I drain it until it's completely dead. So out of the capacity for the DC port, I got 82%, or another way to state that is I got 1774, and I ran this test 3 times. It takes forever to run this test because at 120 watts with this big of a unit, it takes, you know, what, 8, 9, 10 hours to do. So over 80% is still pretty good. I'm more concerned about the AC test because you're buying these things to really drain the AC test. So we'll turn this off. All right, so for the AC test, we plug it up into my little energy meter here. And normally we can plug this up, and I normally would have this completely, obviously charged up. It's only at 62%. I just want to show you how these tests go because I'm not about to do them in real time. But you can see right now that this thing is drawing 2 watts. And I haven't even turned the space heater on. So the 2 watts that it's drawing is that there is a small light on the space heaters, like a small illuminated light. So that light draws 2 watts just to keep the space heater going. But if I turn the space heater on, I turn it on high, you can see this thing is going to jump up and tell you in real time exactly what the space heater is drawing, which it should jump up to around 1,400. And then here, this thing will tell me the cost in kilowatt hours of how much that, you know, how much it completely depletes this system. So when I run this test with the space heater, it's forcing the fans to run. So I normally run this test 2 different times. I'll run it over 1,000 kilowatts, which forces the fans to run, which means the capacity test won't be as efficient rather. And then I'll also run this test with a low powered fan or a a heat gun, and I would force the unit to run, around no more than 700 watts. It keeps the fan at a super low decibel, and I get better capacity, which is probably more similar to what you're going to be doing in real life. I highly doubt that you're going to run this unit over 1300 kilowatts for an hour and a half. That's probably not going to be something that you do. But I put the worst test that I got for this unit into here, and the worst test that I got for this unit is 1942. So 1942 watt hours is what I got out of this test when I ran it. That is 90%. That is really, really good. I like when I can get a unit that can give me 87% or more. This one is giving me 90%, which is fantastic. So another thing I like to test is, can it maintain its concurrent watts? If it can maintain its concurrent watts no matter what, then I give it 100%. So this unit can output at 2600. It can output at 2600 watts. So normally what I like to do for this test is we would turn the space heater up and we will hook up. So that's going to force this unit to pull. The space heater is going to pull like 1300 watts. We're going to hook up a Blue Eddy. All right, so another thing we'll hook up, we have a Blue Eddy heater here, and plugging that up, we're going to force this unit to get over 2000 watts pretty quick, because the Blue Eddys should be drawing at least 800 watts. The space heater's drawing, 1300 watts. You see, we just jumped up to almost 2200 watts, and it's gonna maintain 2200 watts until it dies. All right, so I'm still pulling about 2200 watts. Let's turn the Blue Eddy up. So we go to 1500 watts. Now we're pulling 2236, 2240-ish out of this unit. We should trip it down because I'm now forcing the space heater to run on high. I'm running the Blue Eddy on high. We just jumped to 27, and now we just tripped it. So I am not in P boost mode, and we tripped the circuit on the unit itself. All right, so we got to talk about the value for this unit, because it does draw a lot of value when it comes to what it can offer the unit overall. So as I mentioned, this thing is often on sale for about $1,200. I did see it at its retail price for a couple of days, but for the most part, you can get it for $11.99. And at that price, this thing does come out at 55 cents a watt hour, which is right at the mark to get above an 80%, but it doesn't drop below that. So right now that puts this thing at an 80%, which is good. Overall score I gave this thing is 89%. I think this thing can get into the 90% very easily, especially if it consistently sells at like $1,000 or $1,100. The price is going to definitely be beneficial. So let's just talk about some things I like about it a lot. Then I'm going to show you how I use this thing quite often. The maximum watt input when it comes to the solar charging is pretty dope. So if you have this permanently set up at like a cabin, a shed, when you have those like permanently affixed with some solar panels on top of the roof or something like that, and you can just plug this thing up and pump 1200 watts into solar, that's pretty dope. That's the highest that I've been able to get my hands on. I do have an EcoFlow and a Blue Eddy unit that can do 1000 watts. This one can do 1200 watts. I haven't even been able to put 1200 watts into it, but I'm sure it can handle it. Another thing I really like about this unit is the parallel port. This is the type of unit where I would buy 2 of these base machines. I wouldn't even get the battery expansion. I would get 2 of these base machines in the parallel box that it takes to run this. Just hook these up together, and now I can up my capacity. If I want to run this with a space heater and I want to run a miter saw or a circular saw or a table saw, which those things are going to definitely, if you're running a space heater inside of this man cave and then you hook up a miter saw or something like that, it would trip these units, most of these units individually, very, very easily because of that initial spike. But to be able to hook 2 of these up together, run them at 46, as long as everything is working great, that means that I can work in a cold environment like year round. And that's the thing about just a battery expansion versus parallel. Battery expansion means that it still outputs at whatever the hell the output is. With this unit is 2600 watts. If all you do is buy the battery expansion, it still only outputs at 2600 watts. If you buy the parallel ports, that means that this thing can run at 4600 watts. I don't know what it can boost at. But I'm assuming if it can run at 4600 watts, it has to boost it at 4700, 4650, whatever the case may be. I like that a lot. I don't need the 30 amp port. I don't have an RV, but I can definitely see if I rent one, if we go on a road trip, if I go with a buddy, or if I just buy a adapter. So if I have something that wants to run on the 30 amp and I buy the adapter and I can use this unit for that, that's pretty freaking awesome as well. Now, let me show you how I normally incorporate these things into my life so that I'm not just buying them and seemingly waiting for an emergency. All right, so this is my coffee mess. This is where I oftentimes use this machine, where it's normally not sitting on top of my tool chest, on top of my Husky. It's normally sitting on the floor. But this coffee mess incorporates a lot of stuff that draw a lot of watts when they power on at the same time. Espresso machine, a grinder, I have a kettle over here, all the lights over here, except for that one, all are running on battery. But as soon as I plug them into the actual, the unit themselves, they'll switch over to AC power. So a lot of things at once. So this is normally how I will use it. So I can turn this units on. So let me screen record real quick. I'm going to show you some of the features. The unit. All right. So in here, I'll turn off P boost mode. Actually, let's just turn P boost mode back on. So it gives you a little warning on there, shows the percentage of what's going on, what's being drawn into the unit currently. So I'll turn the AC port back on and everything over here will turn on at one time. And when I do that, this normally does spike me. I'm going to turn this up, turn my kettle on, and my kettle is normally going to force me to spike. So between my espresso machine warming itself up, the kettle warming itself up, this thing's going to spike pretty quick. I don't know if it's going to get over 3000 watts, but it does get up there pretty quick. And then if I were to turn on my grinder, that draws more wattage out of this thing as well. So this is, and I'm just running the grinder, which I normally wouldn't do. But I got my kettle going, warming itself up. I'm warming up an espresso machine. Let's turn the grinder off, because that's kind of loud. But these are the things I normally would use, incorporate it for here in the man cave. So there may be scenarios in your life where you just want to use this thing all the time. Maybe you put it on the floor or underneath the cabinet in your kitchen, as long as you can get some type of decent airflow. Maybe you're in a man cave. Maybe you want to run it something like this, but this is how I would normally run it. Get things popping, get things going. This thing is going to warm itself to about 190, I think 198 degrees and 197 degrees. And then once that does, it should draw itself down because the water, the thermal block has heated itself up. You see it just drop down to about 1200 watts, because the only thing left is warming itself up is the kettle, which is going to warm itself up to 207 degrees. So that takes a little bit longer. But just to show you that this thing can, you know, generically just testing out a space heater and all that other type of stuff, I understand that that might be something that you normally would do, but this is kind of how I would incorporate it here in my man cave. So final thoughts on the Dabbsson DBS2100 Pro. Is it a smash or a pass? I don't know if I said this, but Dabbsson is not sponsoring this video. They sent the unit to me for free. They don't get to see the video before you guys. And they sent the unit to me in exchange for a video, but there was no time frame on when I had to do a video. But if you want to know if this is something I would spend my money on, yes, I would. It's a smash for me. There are a few more improvements I would like. You know, first off, I would like to be able to visually see if the AC ports are on, other than a small little icon on the screen. That would be nice to be able to do. The actual app itself is pretty nice. It does have a lot of features that the EcoFlow app has. I think that they may have used the same designer, because this thing has all sorts of stuff like time management. You can schedule when you want the AC port to turn on and turn off. So if you are using this in this type of scenario, in a coffee mess, and you want the espresso machine to turn on in the mornings and warm itself up, but you don't want to physically do that, you can make the machine turn on its AC ports at a specific time. You can make the machine discharge its ports at a specific time. I love the physical hardware on this machine as well. I love the fact that you can easily do firmware updates. Now, it doesn't have as comprehensive as an app of EcoFlow. I think that it's like EcoFlow #1, Dabbsson #2, Anchor #3. I think this is a really good app, though. The only thing that's kind of missing out of it is the settings on it. So if this unit was to completely die, it's normally in the EcoFlow app, you can tell the unit to remember everything you had set up. beforehand. That's something that's in the EcoFlow app. And the EcoFlow app has a little bit more to it. But if you're not an app person, the hardware on here is really, really good. The fact that you can go from the charging mode you have set up in here, which I have mine set up currently for a charging speed of 800, as I mentioned, but you can get the wattage of charging all the way down to 50 watts if you want to, or you can boost it all the way up to 2100 watts for charging speeds. Now, when would the hell would you be able to get 2100? The reason they have 2100 watts charging speed is because they also make these units for the EU, and the EU runs off of 220, so they can get more watts from the wall. So if I put this on fast charging for 2100 watts, it's not going to do anything here in the States. So it really wouldn't make sense to go above 1800 watts. But it's just nice to know that you can do that type of stuff with no issues. So I'm really a big fan of the app, where it's going. There's just not a lot of things that I definitely could want out of the unit other than the screen itself. Also, I would like to know a little bit more precision out of the screen of what's being outputted. Bluetooth does a really good job with this. Anchor does a decent job as well. Right now, this just says output 300 watts going somewhere. In the app, I can see where everything is going, but I would like to know that this many is going to the USB-C ports, this many is going to the DC, this many is going to the AC. So if I need to turn something off because I want to give more to the AC or whatnot, I can do that pretty easily. I can know which drawing so much. Bluetti has a little bit better screen than that. Same thing with the input. If I'm inputting with AC, but I also am inputting with DC, whether it's the car or with solar, I want to know where's the input coming from without having to open the app. The app tells you where everything is coming from, but the screen doesn't. So it would be nice if it would tell me on the screen where I'm outputting more precisely and where I'm inputting more precisely. But this screen is super slim. It's EcoFlows, and that, you know, most people don't care about that type of stuff. I do, I care about that, but you know, it's gonna be, your mileage may vary exactly what you care. Comment down below, S for smash, P for pass. Let me know what you think about the Dabbsson, the DBS2100 Pro. If this is your first time stopping by, hit the subscribe button. I would love to have you part of the battalion. If this is not your first time stopping by, thank you once again for watching me run my grape. For everyone else, we'll speak soon.